Welcome to Restoration Beyond the Couch. I'm Dr. Lee Long, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Sara Blakeney, one of our counselors here at Restoration and the author of Calling Out the Gold, Equipping Millennials to be the Next Church Leaders. In this conversation, we take a closer look at generational shifts, especially the unique values, challenges, and strengths of millennials. From leadership and purpose to mental wellness and faith, we'll explore what it means to support and empower the next generation. Your path to mental wellness starts here. Welcome, Dr. Sara Blakeney. It is so good to have you with us today. I'm excited for you to share with our audience your research on the impacts that the relationship between different generations. And well, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. And
you are a therapist here with us at Restoration, and you work with marriages, families.
Mm-hmm. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
There you go.
And also part of your illustrious DBT program.
Yes, we are. We do love our DBT, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us can you give us a quick overview about your research and like just what was the inspiration in you wanting to understand the different generations and the impact that different generations have on one another? And you can illuminate much better or elucidate much better than I on your research.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. This is so fun to do this with you.
Awesome.
So I'm glad to be here. So most of my career, whether it's been in counseling or church ministry, has been with the millennial generation. So I started out in youth ministry back in the 90s when millennials were in high school. And I've just sort of followed millennials throughout my career. And I noticed right away that millennials were different from other generations. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I knew that they were really always excited to roll up their sleeves and get involved in the activities, the world around them, social justice, whatever the cause was, they wanted to be a part of. They were also really quick to question any meta-narratives, anything that was assumed to be a given in life.
Okay.
And so being in church ministry, that was a lot of times in the institution of the church, them asking, well, why? Why does it have to be this way? And really wanting to figure it out at like a grassroots level, like in a collaborative way. Can we do life together and figure this out together? As opposed to an authority disseminating information and just like telling them how it's going to be and them accepting that. So I've seen it both in Christian ministry and in counseling, where the clients want to collaborate with me to, as we say in DBT, build a life worth living for themselves.
Right. You know, that's one of the things that I think I have enjoyed learning from your perspective is you hear a lot of criticisms of, oh, that's a millennial way of going about it. And it seems to be a negative sentiment. And I think that one of the things that I love about what you've done is that you've actually illuminated something that I think this generation really is teaching us, especially about relationships. Like why there was somebody that there was an old story that somebody told me that, you know, a woman was preparing for Christmas dinner and she cut the ham in half, and her daughter asked, "Mom, why do you cut the ham in half?" She was like, "Well, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Let's ask your grandmother." And so they asked the grandmother, who was still living, and she said, "Mom, why do we cut the ham in half?" She goes, "Oh, well, because when I was growing up, the oven that we had was really small, so we had to do it so it would fit." And the mother never questioned it. She just went with the dissemination of, we cut the ham in half. And the daughter questioned it. And it was like, oh, so I don't have to cut this ham in half? And I thought that was really, and it was an interesting thing that
Yes, so your ham analogy is so good because it's representative of one of these meta narratives, right? One of these stories, one of these concepts
Right.
that we hold as truth. And why? Because it's always been done that way. And so what's interesting, when I was doing my PhD research, I was really taking a look at millennials and now Gen Z, who are very unique as generations because they are the first fully postmodern generations. And what postmodernism means is that they reject these meta narratives. So in other words, when they're going through life and someone who's an authority says, well, we cut the ham in half, they're like, well, why? Well, because it's always been done that way. No, that's speaking a different language to them.
Wow.
For postmodernism, reality is constructed.
So would it be safe to say that there's postmodernism is wrapped up in the whole idea of my perception is my reality? Like, is that rooted in postmodernism?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is, in a counseling context, that really jives because you want to validate someone's subjective reality as a starting point for working with them, and then being able to challenge from there. But the first step is to validate that. And so, totally
that's
my train of thought.
I think that's really interesting to conceptualize it from that place of it being such a subjective experience, right? Because, because how long of this postmodernism, this is brand new. I mean, has there been, from what you've uncovered, has there been that big of a mindset shift or a worldview shift in generations? Like, how long has that been?
It represents a seismic shift. I mean, this is what is so uncanny to me is that millennials are the first fully postmodern generation. So the rest of us, I'm Gen X, and before that, for the last 300 years plus, has been the Enlightenment age, the age of reason.
Right.
I think, therefore I am. Right?
Right.
So I'm having thoughts, disembodied information. Right? That's what these meta narratives are. We cut the ham in half because we have this idea, this knowledge that we've always done it this way.
Right. And by disembodied, I'm asking, do you mean like, where am I in that?
Yes.
I am not in that. I don't know why. I can't fully embrace that because I'm not sure where I exist in that.
Exactly. I'm not having the same lived experience that my great grandmother had.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, because my oven isn't small.
Yes.
Hers was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the beautiful part of this postmodern generation is they're coming along and in some ways taking a wrecking ball to some of these understood, accepted meta narratives and by asking why. Why does it have to be this way?
You know what I think is interesting about that is that wrecking ball can be seen as a positive or it could be seen as a negative. And I think often when we ask why, I think that sometimes the person who's receiving that question, the person who's being asked that question, it seems like it can be a really personal thing. And I'm curious if you believe that's part of the reason why there's such a rub with maybe not Gen X, but the Enlightenment period versus the postmodern period is don't question me. And it's like, are millennials though in Gen Z, are they really questioning me? Like this young daughter was not questioning her mother or her grandmother. She was questioning the ham. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, I wonder if that concept is at play.
Questioning the rationality of it, the reason, the rationale of it. Why are we doing it this way? And
Right.
you're absolutely right. That can feel like a threat to authorities, to those who are consider themselves subject matter experts in a particular field. If one of these younger generations comes along and says, well, help me understand, why do we do it this way? That can feel threatening, but it's the posture of, and this is why a lot of people have accused these younger generations of being narcissistic and not team players, because they're asking these questions. They are challenging some of these meta narratives.
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right. It's not that they're trying to buck the system
right.
or authority in a rebellious way. What they're wanting to do is create meaning in their lives. Because if reality is constructed, if reality is subjective and reality is what I say it is, then they're going to need to be questioning all sorts of things, because it's all data that's helping them build this sense of self.
Yeah.
Because it's not bestowed on them, it's created. And there's pros and cons to that, right?
Sure.
I mean, think about the existential angst that you have when you're in charge of creating your own reality. That's a tall order.
Right. I think an interesting thing about that whole piece of trying to create your own reality, or you're trying to learn your own sense of identity. I think it is, like you said, there's pros and cons. I think there's so much beauty there, or potential beauty, to open yourself up to community, to an understanding of, because when you think about the greatest law, there's one and one time only when Jesus is asked a question in the Bible that he answers directly with a very direct answer. It's in all three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And it is, okay, Rabbi, okay, teacher, of all of these laws, and there were 613 laws. So the question was asked, of all of these 613 laws, which one was the greatest? And his answer was love. Thank you, Bono, for you Gen Z, or our Gen X's that are out there listening. Thank you. Love is the highest law. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second one is much like the first, that you would love your neighbor how? In the way you love yourself. So it's an inverted sentence. So it's love God, love yourself, so that you have the capacity or the knowledge to love others. And the thing that struck me when we were talking about your research is this generation is really setting up, not just for themselves, but for all the generations to come behind them, this question of, how do I love myself? Therefore, there is now that's the pro. The con can be, I can get stuck on trying to love myself at the cost of seeing anyone other than me. And I think the narcissism piece is more about, I am going to find my sense of self through you. In other words, it's not an independent endeavor. It's done through someone else. Therefore, it's not self-focused. It's others-focused. I'm asking you to focus on me. Mm-hmm. That's more along the lines of narcissism, because I don't have a sense of self in that. But I think that there's so much beauty there, potential beauty, is to set up generations to come, and themselves in generations to come, of learning to self-discovery.
Absolutely. Yes. And it goes back to the difference between finding it together through a collaborative relationship,
right, versus
these pieces of knowledge that don't have any lived experience.
Right.
And I think it's a whole different way of looking at the Christian life and scripture as well. Because if we're looking at the Bible as just a set of proof texts to live a moralistic life,
right,
that is why it's that is causing millennials and then Gen Z to be some of the most unchurched, dechurched generations among us. And in fact, that was part of my PhD research, is to figure out why millennials were part of what's called this dropout phenomenon. And so all of this played into this. They're like, I have to do all this stuff just because you're telling me to. That's not going to fly. And so instead, just to your point, looking at the Christian life as a relationship of love with one another and with our higher power. It's about relationship.
Right.
It's about an incarnational experience, meaning the Bible is not just a set of proof texts. It's a story about a God who came and lived among us, the incarnation. And then in the same way, we can be incarnational with a little I, in relationship with one another.
Right.
In a mutual way where, yes, I'm discovering who I am, and then I'm bringing myself into a friendship, into a family relationship.
Right.
And then let's discover together, how we're going to be in relationship and how we're going to learn to love one another.
Right.
In a healthy way and in a way that really taps into how we're created to be.
I think that's interesting because you take the church, you take any institution, you take the workplace. And, somebody was saying that by I think it was 2030, somewhere in there, maybe it was 2050, that the whole 9 to 5 concept will be a concept of the past. And I thought to myself, why? I sound like a millennial. No, I'm kidding. But why? And I think it's really pointing to what your research is elucidating is the fact that, well, why do we do 9 to 5? Why does work have to look this way? And that is being questioned. I had somebody say to me, I don't want to be, when I'm 60 years old or 70 years old, I don't want to be irrelevant in the workplace. And my thought to him was, I don't think you'll be irrelevant in the workplace if you learn to play well with others that are several generations younger than you. And in other words, it's learning to accept those that are generations younger than you and understand them differently and not be threatened by them. And it was interesting. The conversation that ensued after that was, yeah, but they don't do it. I was like, and I finished their sentence, the way you do. Right. And so can we, I'm just thinking about being an employer. It's like, can we learn from this group that's coming up, the millennials, the Gen Z, the whatever generation is below the Gen Z? Like, can we be open to walking through the why with them? And if a parent is listening of a millennial or of a Gen Z, it's like, well, we didn't do it that way. I mean, I don't know. How often do we hear that in our offices?
Yeah.
I didn't do it that way.
And I mean, the reality is we're going to have to learn because the shift has happened.
Right. Like it or not.
Like it or not.
Here it is.
The age of reason is over.
Wow.
We're in a whole different epistemological age, which means how do we know what we know?
Right.
And so we have to learn how to bridge the gap with the generations. And I was thinking about this. It really is because we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We still need rational mind, information. We need a plumb line of truth,
right,
and facts and scientific method, right, of how to navigate our lives. And so we need a both and. We need to be able for these younger generations and the older generations to come together and bring the best parts of both.
Yes.
In a way that, in DBT terms, has us in our wise mind.
Right. And to describe wise mind, it's you have a circle it's two concentric circles. Right. And you have one circle that is labeled reason, one circle that is labeled emotion, and the overlap is labeled wisdom. And so I think you're so right about that. And here we are once again coming back to the fact that that wisdom is really embodying relationship. It's embodying that connection. It's the both and.
Yes.
And so it's how would you encourage a Gen X or a baby boomer generation, how would you encourage those generations to interact with the millennial generation and the Gen Z?
That's such a great question. I think understanding that the younger generations are going to need collaboration and figuring things out together. So whether it's a parent-child relationship, a teacher-student relationship, a therapist-client relationship, giving the younger generations a safe place to wonder out loud.
So in other words, don't be threatened. Please don't be threatened by the wonder. Even if you believe this has been figured out, there's no need to question this. It is okay to question that's not a personal attack.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I'm thinking again about scripture and how Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? And so part of the Enlightenment versus postmodernism debate is truth absolute, right? Set in stone? Or is it relative? Is it just all what I say it is and constructed? I think that's the wrong argument. Jesus said, I am the truth. So truth is a person. Truth is the relationship, right? And the way Jesus operated as a leader was he had disciples and they did life together. They walked through life together on a journey. So they discovered how to love, how to live life together, how to, in DBT terms, build a life worth living in relationship with one another. And so if parents, teachers, and therapists can take a cue from the way that Jesus, again, that incarnational way of helping others, come along with me. Let's do this together.
You know, the interesting thing about that is that's doing leadership out, like leadership lived out. And that is something that I believe we are being called to. Like this generation is requesting that I want to see you live an authentic. If you say that sleep is good for me, I want to see you sleep well too. If you say that getting all my protein is good for me, then I want to see that you do that as well. And I want to know why. What is it? And I agree with you that the curiosity, but it's also well, do you do the same thing? And there is such a, I don't know if it's a call to action or if it's a call to embodiment. Like you keep saying incarnational, that's a call to embodiment.
Yes.
It's the embodying of what you believe. So truly it's a call to authenticity.
I was about to say the exact same word, authenticity.
And I, you were talking about the pros and the cons. I mean, to me, as you and I have unpacked your research and you have really, I keep using the word, but elucidated this for me, I have been more excited about these younger generations. Like I almost get so fired up, I could run through a brick wall out of excitement because there's so much, like you said, the authenticity is there. The connection is there. In all the research I've done on depression, chronic depression that comes by way of early childhood trauma, which impacts attachment, is all about connecting. It's all about the therapist connecting with the person sitting on the sofa. And obviously connecting in appropriate ways, but it's all interpersonal.
Absolutely.
And that is what we've seen in the research there, is that interpersonal connection really does help decrease depression. And so these millennials and these Gen Zers are really, I would say, intrinsically calling out for what we're proving in science is effective.
Exactly.
And that's
Yes.
super encouraging.
Mm-hmm. And it's this third wave of psychotherapy, you know, where it's about showing up as yourself, still that professional relationship and distance, but bringing yourself as a therapist into the office and saying, you know what, this skill really works well for me too. And let me tell you times that I use it in my life. And that's us being authentic as people, not just these authorities, people that we're setting ourselves
We say you
up.
should use this, therefore use it.
Exactly. And they're going, go jump in the lake. Why? You know?
Yeah.
And so to be able to embody the very healing that we're trying to offer to our clients is profound and powerful.
It is profound and powerful. And the beauty, again, I mean, where with all of the studies, the research that I've done is on CBASP, and CBASP really it embodies a lot of what you're describing, in that the therapeutic relationship is used as a tool in the session. Therefore, if someone is reading your mind or saying, well, I know what you think, it's like, wait, I don't get to be a part of this conversation when that's said. I feel left out because I don't get to say what I think. It's just assumed already. Where's my place in that? And what I've seen is that when that process is engaged with the person being treated, they say, oh my gosh, yeah, my spouse or my partner or my friend or my mom or my whomever, my other relationships tell me I do that to them too. It's like, yeah, well, can I be a part of this conversation? Can you let me tell you what I think? And it's bringing that relationship into the therapeutic experience that is, I have found to be so powerful, and the research has shown to be so powerful. And I wonder if now hang with me as I wonder, as we've been talking about, I wonder if there is a way for us to encourage people, bosses, authority figures, parents, teachers, all of those people who are in authority. I wonder if there is a way to encourage all of those to ask questions maybe a little bit differently. Meaning, how are you showing up in this? Student, employee, child. How are you showing up in this? What's coming up for you in this? Like, in other words, asking them to show up, like inviting them to show up in the questioning. And I also wonder if there's a place of the parent, the authority figure, to say, hey, this is how this is impacting me, without making the other person responsible for their feelings. Because I don't ever want to do that as a therapist, to make the client or patient responsible for my feelings. That's not it at all. I just want them to see the impact that they have on me. I will handle my feelings, but I want you to see what the impact is. And I wonder if there's a way for us to display that, or I don't know a better way to say that. But. Yes,
because at that point, the self, the therapist, the parent, the teacher becomes a tool,
right?
For by their own experience, their own relationship with the one that they're trying to heal, teach, disciple, whatever it is.
Right. And that experiential piece is, I mean, I would imagine that that's very much rooted in postmodernism.
Absolutely.
Is that it is all about experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really a beautiful way of, I think, of characterizing this, is like we are being called to a different experience with these generations. And can we be open to that experience?
Yes.
I wonder if a practical example, and I'm asking you if a practical example of this might be that, you have, like let's take a parenting example. If you have a kid who made as I like to call, a boneheaded mistake, and let's say they snuck out, and where are you in that, parent? As a parent, you probably feel hurt and betrayed. Why did they go against you? And because it would feel personal.
Mm-hmm.
But it may look like asking your kid, what were you after? Why did you do that? What were you thinking? Not in the, what were you thinking?
Yes.
Where it's a rhetorical shaming question, but really what was the thought pattern behind that?
Mm-hmm.
What were you after? Because I want to find you, parent. First parent, you got to start with you. Where are you in that? Well, I'm hurt. Okay. Don't hand your hurt to your kid. Hold on to your hurt, explore that, but then let's discover them.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you do the thing that you did? What was it about that was so alluring and pulled you into it? And then once they tell you, well, it sounded like it would be a good time. Okay. Can I tell you what that good time did to me? It lowers my trust. It makes me wonder, are you making good decisions?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you thinking this all the way through? And the impact on me is I don't trust as much now.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we're going to have to work to rebuild that trust. So I'm wondering, is that a reasonable example?
A great example, because it's showing that, hey, we're in this world together. We're trying to construct this thing called a loving family.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, let's take a look at where we're doing it and we're not doing that together. And then what's interesting is, like, kind of inherent in that is this idea of values. The parents bringing some values, some implied values into that situation.
Yeah.
We want to be a family that trusts each other. We want to be a family that has some rules that we follow.
Yeah.
So here's the benefit. Here's why we don't want to throw out the whole enlightenment thinking, rational part of the equation. Because values, that's a meta narrative right there. That is this overarching rubric that we're going to live our life by. So we can't just say, okay, millennials, let's just construct willy-nilly our reality ground up. There's still a place for, as a family or a school or a church or a therapy session, to live by these overarching values.
Right.
Because when we're living congruent with our values, that's where we're going to have a sense of peace inside of ourselves and in relationship with one another.
Which is such yes, thank you for laying all of that out, because I'm thinking from, like, as an employer, it's that deadline was missed.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, wait, employer, before you go in there and scorch earth on that younger employee, it's like, wait, where are you? Well, I'm left kind of hanging out to dry. Now I have to figure out how to dance around getting this accomplished. I was counting on you. And so I was let down. And then we don't go in there with shame and blame, but we go in there with curiosity and asking, like, hey, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Like, help me understand this, because now I'm left high and dry by you. Your behavior left me high and dry. And I think there's a distinction there. It's not necessarily coming after that employee's identity, but that behavior left me high and dry. How are we going to fix this? Because we're going to have to fix this together. And I really need you to step up here with me to figure out how we're going to get this accomplished. And so what we're suggesting here is that's more of the embodied, authentic relationship approach, as opposed to the, hey, you jerk kid, you didn't do this and you're in trouble. I'm going to dock your pay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
do it because I said so.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, this is so, enlightening. I know we've left the enlightening era and we're in the postmodern era, but this is really your research. I will just speak from my perspective. Your research has been so freeing for me I'm not a millennial. I'm not a Gen Zer. And to see these two generations as having so much wonderful beauty and excitement to offer to this world. It has been so encouraging to me. So thank you for what you've done here and just for coming on and sharing this with us. I hope that this is life-changing for our listeners. We like to end with one practical piece of wisdom that someone could walk with throughout their day. What's one thing that you could leave our listeners with that could encourage them throughout their week?
Oh, I love that question. I think to the millennials and the Gen Zs in our life, listen to them, ask them questions, be curious about them first.
I love that.
That's meeting them where they are.
And I would add one thing if you'll allow me to.
Please.
They have so much to teach us. And please be open to that, which is what you said. Mm-hmm. Meet them with curiosity. Be open to what they have to say. That's great. Well, thank you, Dr. Sara Blakeney.
Thank you for having me.
As always, it is a pleasure to get to spend time with you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks.
If you found value in our discussion and wish to uncover more about the fascinating world of mental wellness, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where Dr. Long will continue to delve into empowering therapies and strategies for mental wellness. Your journey to understanding and embracing mental health is just beginning, and we're excited to have you with us every step of the way. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and remember to celebrate restored freedom as you uncover it.